Welcome to Florida is Our Domain.
Welcome back to Florida is Our Domain with Anthony Policastro. Tony is a Florida eminent domain attorney and the founder of Policastro Law Group with over 30 years of experience representing national corporations, business owners, and individual landowners across the state. Today, he's joined by Jared Silver, an eminent domain attorney at the firm who previously handled these cases for the Florida Department of Transportation. I'm Lisa Mosby, and in this episode, we're focusing on residential eminent domain cases, including roadway expansion, impacts on homeowners, valuation issues, and how residential takings differ from commercial property cases. Welcome back, Tony. Jared, great to be with you today.
Thank you, Lisa.
Good to see you again, Lisa.
You know, you both have represented homeowners who have property taken to either widen a road or put in a new roadway. Tony, let's start with you. What are some of the most important factors in analyzing those cases?
I think there's a couple of factors. First thing is it an existing roadway? Are they widening it from, let's just say, 2 lanes to 4 lanes? Versus it's a new roadway going through, and there hasn't been a road there before, and what is the effect of that on the property? So for instance, fairly recently, Jared and I did a series of cases where the road was being punched through the backyards of homeowners. Now, they were on rather large lots, but it was still new roadway going through, and it was a roadway that is going to be put in as 2 lanes initially, expanded to 4, and then they were taking enough right of way to eventually expand to a 6-lane roadway going through folks' backyard property. Now, these were large acreage properties. However, the taking does changed really completely the nature, characteristics, and location of the property, because you're going to obviously have a loss of privacy, a loss of security. You're going to have a noise factor, obviously. So you've had these nice homes that are on acreage of lots, and afterwards it's not that same bucolic setting. It is, a road is going to be back there, and that I think is going to affect the values of property dramatically. So we have to take a look at what sort of cures or fixes could be for the property, which can be fencing, which can be landscaping, but then there's still going to be residual damages to the property, because the property is not going to be worth the same in the before as it's going to be in the after when that road is put in. Now, when it's something with a widening of a road, that's still going to change it, because usually that widening of the road, right, is going to affect the setback to your front door, essentially. So depending on what that taking is, are they taking a few feet? Are they taking 20 feet? And how close that road is coming into, again, that will be changing the location, the characteristics of the property. And so those are all elements of what we call severance damages to the remainder, where the property isn't worth the same in the after situation as it was in the before.
And Jared, do you want to elaborate on what the impacts are to residential homes when a roadway is expanded?
Sure. Obviously, more traffic through in front of somebody's door, that has a massive impact, especially in residential areas. You're talking about an increase in noise. As Tony said, a reduced setback. Your home in before, let's say if it's a two lane road to a 4-lane road, your house might be 30 or 40 feet back from that roadway. Now it's 20 feet or 15 feet away, and that's very uncomfortable. Now there's no room for your kids to go play out front. There's nowhere to park in front of the house, or you may only be limited to 1 car to park instead of 2 or 3. There's also, we had a case recently where the homeowners had a gate, an electric gate, in a mailbox, electric gate And so they had to, as part of the cure plan, had to take out that gate with all the stones, and it was very nicely done and beautiful, and just move it back 10 feet because this was only a 10-foot taking, but it went right into their electric gate. And so they had to take out all the stones and do all that and move it back. Mailboxes that are on property have to be considered. So there, these impacts, while they may be just a few feet in land, can be absolutely monumentous for homeowners.
Tony, how does an appraiser working for a property owner go about valuing a residential home that has a taking?
Well, they're going to go out there and they have to do a full before value. Now, this is where sometimes the government appraiser doesn't do it. He will do a strip valuation, just kind of a land only taking, and not take a look at the improvement, which the improvement is the home on the property. We always take a look at both. So we're taking a look at, land sales, valuing the land. We're also going to value that improvement as well, because that's how a property owner, that's how properties sell, right? So we take a look at the before value, and we can do that by using the sales comparison approach. Can also utilize the cost approach. So for newer builds, we'll go ahead and we'll hire a contractor, and we will, in effect, have the contractor in today's market say, how much would it cost to reproduce this home? And then the appraiser will go ahead and they will value the land, and then they will use a depreciation to the contractor's numbers, because it's not a brand new home. Usually in these situations, we're using the cost approach for a home that has been, recently built, say in the last several years. And then we'll use that depreciation, and what that number comes up with, we'll add that to the land value, and that's how you'll get your before value. And then they'll take a look at the after value with the road in, taking a look at comparable sales to see what the after value of that home will be. And that's how you derive your severance damages or damages to the remainder. So for instance, if a house is worth $1 million before, and the government comes along and they take $50,000 worth of land and improvements, the house should be worth $950,000 after, if there's no damages. You've been paid your $50,000. Your home was worth $1 million before, it should be worth $950,000. If the house is only worth $750,000 because of the taking, the change of location that we talked about earlier, a setback change, then you're entitled to an additional $200,000 in severance damages. So that is, that in a nutshell.
And then what experts do you hire to value a taking from a residential home?
Well, it's like Tony, what you just said. You have the appraiser who's going to evaluate the home. They're going to rely, especially with the newer builds, as Tony said, on the cost approach. They're going to have a contractor who's going to value those improvements that have been recently added to the house, and the appraiser is going to incorporate that amount into their appraisal. And then also we have an engineer who's going to come in and is going to look at the property before. They're going to look at everything in the before condition, the drainage, the zoning, how many parking spaces there is, how many feet is setback from the roadway. And then they're going to look at in the after condition. What's the setback now? How many cars go by in the before condition? How many will go by after with the expansion of the lanes? What is the drainage patterns in the after condition? And they're going to also value everything that's been taken in the that was taken as part of the improvements that were taken, even if it's just dirt and sod. They're going to value that as well. And they're all going to also come up with the cure plan, which is designed to mitigate as many damages as there could be. So they may have put up new fencing, or the mailbox example I used before in the gate. I can put that in, and a new install of that, new parking to put in. They'll come up with that plan to mitigate the damages, but those also cost money. And then they'll have the opinion that the appraiser can then rely on to assess damages as a result of the taking, even without the cure plan. Even after it's been mitigated, there's still likely to be some damages that still exist, and the after value will be lower than it would have been in the before condition as a result of the taking.
Sure. And Tony, how does a taking from a residential home differ from a taking from a commercial property?
Okay. For the residential home, the impacts are going to be different, because when you've got a residential home, you do not want to have the increased traffic going by your house, or new traffic being brought to your house if it's a new roadway, versus if you got a business. uh, Increased traffic really isn't necessarily a problem. Now, it can be a problem if a median goes up where you can't have access to that property easily before, where traffic can't make a left into the property, or you can't make a left out, and your property, your business becomes right in, right out only. In those cases, the only time you can make a damage claim on that is if that median is constructed within the part taken. Um, if it is constructed in existing right-of-way that's already owned by the government, then you can't make a claim on that, because you don't have the right, according to case law, for traffic going by your property. So you can't make a damage if they're just doing what they could have always done, even if they hadn't widened that roadway. They could have just done it under even their police powers. You can also take a look at, for the business, if they're changing the driveway widths, or shutting down a driveway will impact. For, the residential properties, it's just the increased traffic. So what Jared was talking about before, it's important to know what is the traffic currently on that road for residential, and what is the projected traffic counts. And if those are going to be jumping up significantly, those are a whole bunch of different sales you need to get in the after situation, because you're become on a main road. And I think we just all intuitively know that your house is not going to sell for as much as it would have in the before situation if you're bringing significant more traffic in front of that house. Homeowners will, shy away from that, or won't pay you as much as they would have previously.
And Tony, when the condemning authority performs their site inspection of your client's property, do you attend the inspection, and why is that important?
We always attend the inspections. It's extremely important. I always want to know what the government is looking at, what their experts are honing in on. I like to ask them questions. Certainly when you're there, you could find out when that appraisal is going to be completed and turned into the government side. Then if the, review appraisers there from the DOT, you can ask them how long that review is going to take. Usually it's at least 30 days. You can ask the acquisition agent when they estimate that they're going to be making an offer. So that's all important information you get to know and you can convey to your client. Also, when you're there, if the client is actually present on the property, you can kind of act as a buffer between the government, and they come in kind of like almost like an army, especially the DOT, where there's a dozen people basically getting on the property, because it's got engineers, it's got outside experts, it's got acquisition agents, it's got relocation agents sometimes. So it's all these folks coming on the property, descending on it, milling about the entire property inside and out. It's never that organized. But you want to stay with your property or business owner to make sure that they don't really have an opportunity to play 20 questions. What I always say is, if you have questions, go ahead and put those in writing, and then we will respond back in writing, so there's no miscommunication. And sometimes we'll answer all the questions, sometimes we'll answer none of the questions, and many times we'll usually be somewhere in between. We'll answer some and not other questions. So, and I also think it's I know that not all eminent domain attorneys, I often find this interesting, do not go out on these site inspections when the government is out there. And I really don't understand that why, because I think your client wants you to be out there to help them sort of navigate that process and not feel like they're put on the spot and they have to answer the questions. I've been in situations where I've been hired after the offer has been made. And usually those folks are very upset because they've spoken directly to the government folks that are there, the appraiser, and then they're quoted in the appraisal report that the government has come up with. And sometimes they're misquoted, they feel. And so, for instance, they might say, "Oh, I'm thinking about putting a new roof on my house." Well, it might come out in the appraisal as this house needs a new roof. So we're going to deduct some valuation for that. It's not in pristine shape then. So be really careful what you're going to say, to the government. And it is good to, as I've said before, to have representation from a good eminent domain attorney when the DOT or the government comes knocking on your door to do the site inspection.
Jared, do you have some final thoughts on that?
No, I completely agree with what Tony said. Showing up is very important, and it's almost, I guess I will add this. It's almost an opportunity to, if you can be that buffer, it's an opportunity to get a free look at the way the government is in the condemning authority is viewing things as they are, because they do usually talk when you ask them questions, how they're viewing that the highest and best use of the property, how they're viewing, they'll have their engineer out there, they'll have a land planner out there as well, so it's sort of like a free discovery for you, and then you can shadow box them and say no, just put it in writing, we'll answer what we need to answer. So we won't give them any information, but they'll give us some. So it's like a free opportunity for a little discovery, and I agree. I don't know why people don't take advantage more of that.
Well said. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your insights, and I appreciate the conversation today.
Thank you,
Right.
Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Florida is Our Domain. Residential takings can affect far more than just the amount of land being acquired, especially when roadway changes alter how a home functions or feels. If your property is being impacted by a public project, visit Policastrolaw.com to schedule a consultation and learn how Tony and his team can help. And don't forget to like, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who might need it. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.